So it's not so much that you have a disease, but that you actually can treat with talk therapy and you can make them a little bit better. So why is all of this important? Because if you go back to what we said from yesterday and looking at phenotypic changes and all that, we're only talking about CPAP treatment over here. We're not talking about the raw blood threshold and so forth. So what are the phenotypes that may actually respond better to PAP therapy? And CPAP therapy is actually indicated for everybody. When we go back to obstructive sleep apnea treatment with the new phenotypic changes, well, some people may not get CPAP. Some people may actually get a sleep aid, something to actually blunt. So what is the impact when you're talking about pulmonary hypertension, let's say? What is the impact that you're going to have on COPD or not, and so forth? Or do you still need to associate all of that? Mortality in patients with obstructive sleep apnea and pulmonary hypertension. Kaplan-Meier curve. So the top over here, those are the predictors for patients that don't have no pH and they have pH. So this is your patient has OSA, they start dying, they go. But look at when you associate two conditions, how it changes, how your mortality changes. In a very short period of time, we're talking about 4 to 8 years. Huge change in the outcomes from your patient. Pulmonary fibrosis. Now, the associated between pulmonary fibrosis, sleep, and pulmonary fibrosis and obstructive sleep apnea is known for decades. That's only one problem. Nobody asks if they have obstructive sleep apnea. Great comorbidity. All the papers, when you go back to the literature for the last 10, 20 years, they talk about the relationship. But that's it. You're spending millions and millions of dollars on IPF. But what is the percentage of those millions and millions that are being spent to use both these things together and try to improve the outcome of these patients, which will die in the next 5 years? But the question is, are they going to die miserable, or can you improve their quality of life, as we have seen quality of life improvement and management of OSA and asthma, COPD, and so forth? People that have to do with the IPF, what do they see? They see people dying and suffering. They see people slowly dying outside and inside. Can we improve? Can we make some changes on that? Can we use some markers to change those things? Can we use PAP and other medications to change? Poor quality of life, as we mentioned. So IPF, OSA, CPAP therapy. What do we gain? Statistically significant quality of life. And the reality is, if I'm going to die, let me die well. Let me have my last 4 or 5 years of my life with quality. And it's proven. We just don't do it. We don't look into that. Everybody looks into my IPF, let's rush for the lung transplant. But what about that bridge to get to the lung transplant? What if they never get the lung transplant? How do we manage these patients? Hypoventilation syndromes overall. I just want to mention a little bit about the neuromuscular conditions. So we talked a little bit about positive blood pressure treatment, which is very important. And neuromuscular condition patients, they breathe well, they start deteriorating. Now they start having desaturations, particularly during sleep on REM. These are patients that will come to you with Duchenne's neuromuscular dystrophy, some other issues, kyphoscoliosis, some other. They're fine during the daytime when you see in the office, but they're dying at night. But when you see an O2 saturation of 80% in the office, you call rapid response. These people have the 80s all night long, and there's no rapid response coming to their room. They don't even know this is happening. All of a sudden, their lung function gets worse, they have some pulmonary infections, everything gets worse, it's no longer just doing REM, all of a sudden it's doing REM and non-REM. The tricky part about these patients is that if you don't evaluate them at the right moment, you'll miss the boat. And if you miss the boat, particularly here, you're going to delay your intervention. Meaning, if you're going to wait just for the REM-related and not do anything, it doesn't work. Because this patient is going to get a sleep study, may not have sleep apnea, but may need positive pressure ventilation at night to improve the quality of life. So nocturnal ventilation hypoventilation in patients that have chronic hypoventilation overall. You're looking at that as you apply major improvement on your CO2, major improvement in the oxygenation. We all know you shift the curve one way, improves the affinity, the oxygenation by default will get better. And we all know that if you're not on the sleep field, the typical fight that you have in the hospital is what? Your partner is discharging somebody for PCO2 of 60 and non-invasive, without the non-invasive mechanical ventilatory support at night, because it's not going to make any change. And finally, a few years ago, you got that beautiful article that says if your patient has that pattern, has COPD, has your CO2 greater than 52, you actually decrease morbidity and mortality in hospital readmissions. And finally, people realize that you need to start non-invasive at night for those patients. Because as you use them at night, they'll ventilate better, the CO2 get better, and now your response gets better on the long run. Non-invasive non-invasive at night, also during the daytime, especially have chest wall dysfunction. Look at this, prior of initiation of nocturnal ventilation. Hospital days, respiratory failure, as you apply, they start being admitted less. They have less respiratory failure. Just because we put some bilevel, or we put A valves, I valves, and we improve ventilation. That's what we have nowadays. Some of the models, of course, there's multiple other models that we use. But you're looking at ResMed respiratory, which is leading on non-invasive at home, particularly. Just a ventilator. Easy to carry, backup battery to most of them. Some people have two just in case the hurricane comes in and destroys the house and they lose this and they have another one in another home in another hospital or so forth. But it works very well. So you have something over here that is your basic backup, your backup rate, that you give your pressure support to improve ventilation, but you can't give these two on those type of conditions. You're actually choosing how much meter ventilation, how much you're going to ventilate your patients. We all know that these patients with neuromuscular conditions and so forth, they have a downtrend on their lung function. So on this device over here, I need to change my pressure support. On these two devices over here, well, the support will be changed because I know what I want. I know how much I want to ventilate my patient. Yes, it costs a little bit more. But I can guarantee you it's much cheaper than one day a hospital stay. So sometimes I look at that, sit down with social worker, and it's crazy because I want to discharge this patient and it's non-invasive at night. I say, where's the sleep study? There's no sleep study. It's PCO2 65. I don't need a sleep study. I'm not taking care of sleep apnea. I'm taking care of nocturnal hypoventilation syndrome. I don't need a sleep study. And I actually have on my quick file because I just printed the Medicare guidelines and it's all highlighted because they always miss the part of the Medicare guidelines that says that you don't need a sleep study. And it's all about teaching. The problem is we're not in the hospital all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I tell my boss at the Sheddick when people start doing the schedule, I want to do some ICU. I want to be on the floor a little bit. Because if I'm not, who's going to teach the future pulmonologist that this is actually a life? Who's going to guide them to the screening from COPD asthma and so forth? Who's going to make a difference? Because we see the day and the night. They take care of the patient as a whole during the day and the night. I tell them all the time, how can you take care of somebody that has respiratory failure with a BiPAP of 15/5 during the daytime, and at night, when you know the patient has obstructive pocket, and you still keep a 15/5, but the CPAP at home is 14. The airway is closed. What are you ventilating when there's no patency in the airway? We look at airway physiology differently, because day and night are very different. Non-invasive therapy on patients with neuromuscular dystrophy. Major impact. So your patients come, they start using their survival. They die a little bit at the beginning, but you're looking at the 6 weeks, you have a nice plateau. You're able to stabilize. Instead of people start dying, you have a plateau later on. Unfortunately, the disease progresses and you can't do much. But it's big. You know, I tell people all the time, if the old times when I saw patients in the ICU, they say, you have terminal cancer. Well, who cares? The chemotherapy is good. Instead of just being alive for 6 months, you're going to be alive for 6 months and a week. That week, maybe when my daughter's getting married, then I'm going to be able to walk her down the aisle. Big difference. One day, maybe the difference between my first grandchild being born and me being able to hold and have one picture, 2, 3, and 100 pictures, so they can show my grandchild who I was, and that I was there at least for that day. Big difference. As you start having family, you become less cynical about life, and you become much more appreciative about life. Indication for non-invasive ambulatory support on patients with neuromuscular disorders. When you start having vital capacity goes down, don't wait until they're dead. Start early. Because if you're waiting for them to become hypoxemic and hyperthyroid, it's too late. Tracheostomy, well, this patient start having problems with secretion, that you're not able to ventilate them very well. They may have some additional care. It's a long conversation. For me, it usually takes me around 6 months of seeing these people almost every week to convince them to go one route or the other route. Because my job is not to convince them to get tracheostomy. My job is to tell them that if they decide to go for tracheostomy, I will be there with them for the entire journey, and they will have my cell phone for any time they need. Because I'm going to be there until the day they die. And if they decide that they don't want it, I'll be there for the day they die as well. So they can call me so we can get them comfortable on the last day of their life and not in suffering. For me, in a nutshell, when you look into this conference today from these topics, there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot that could be studied and could improve. But we do know that OSA is strongly associated with multiple pulmonary conditions, and you don't need to be obese to have it. Therapy improves your asthma control. If you remove your tonsils in a child that has asthma and OSA, you will improve the asthma control. And who knows what else is going to happen later on down the line. COPD patients, acute exacerbation, they have OSA. If you don't treat them properly, they have a worse outcome. Increased length of stay, more expensive. Quality of life, that's the key. We're always focusing on quality of life. Morbidity, mortality is great, but if whatever I do does not change what your quality of life is going to be, it's almost like useless. That's a bit about sleep. You take care of an insomnia patient, 2 months later they come back, they're much happier. You take care of the obstructive sleep apnea, they're much happier. They may hate you first because they have to use the machine. They may hate you first because you have to send them to get a surgical evaluation because they cannot tolerate CPAP or bilateral. But the key is, it doesn't matter which way of therapy they're going to get. You're going to help them for this journey. And at the end, it changes their quality of life. And that's why I keep on talking about, so that's the reason for me to be over here. It's nothing better than this. A beautiful wife, I don't know when she married me, I'm ugly. And I produced 2 beautiful kids because of my beautiful wife, and they're lovely. I couldn't expect for anything better. Better than this is just to come back and be able to work with the personal trainer, which is Dr. Shedek, my mentor from more than 15 years ago. So to have the opportunity to go back to my house 10 years ago to the university and be able to work side to side with the person that actually made me a sleep doctor, which I never wanted to be first. It's incredible. Just to look back and see what I have accomplished because such a great mentor and from this institution, and to be over here present with you guys, it's the biggest satisfaction. Thank you.
What a wonderful lecture. Please, if you have any question for Dr. Abreu, please come forward.
Thank you for this. You suggested asthma plus combinations of sleep apnea, they benefit from using CPAP at night. There is a study done without sleep apnea. Do you see that for asthmatic patients?
So we have a study that we're looking at sham and they're using CPAP on asthma by itself without it. They were not able to recruit enough patients for that, and they couldn't get a clear view on that. So what they think is maybe not having OSA, even though you don't have OSA, just treating with CPAP at low pressure may improve your airway inflammation and saturation may cause it. I haven't seen anything major published that actually attests to that, but there's a hypothesis on that.
If there is no other question, I have to really tell you that Dr. Abreu is the one who actually echoed my thoughts in a very elegant manner that we have to get out of the box and we have to take care of the patients in such an environment, particularly in teaching institute, where we can make a difference for all over USA, what we wanted. Because the sleep study and sleep-related other disorders cannot be neglected. Thank you, Dr. Abreu. The next lecture is my honor and great privilege to introduce you Kate A. Dr. Kashida, who actually is one of the pioneer professor who has been working as a professor of the psychiatry and behavioral science, but he is also division chief and the director of the Stanford sleep medicine in Stanford University. The reason he is a pioneer in this field is that every literature I look for and I find his reference. Believe me, he is a constant worker in this field for many, many years. And Stanford University is actually a pioneer institute in sleep medicine. I welcome Dr. Kashida.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Ahmed. I'd like to actually thank Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Nawaz for kindly inviting me to participate in this wonderful meeting today. So, I have the task of talking a little bit about the future perspectives in sleep medicine research. And I do have one confidential disclosure that's relevant to this talk. I do have some issue grant support from several numerous laboratories. So I'm actually going to be talking about four major topics. One is I'm going to be talking about nasal treatment for obstructive sleep apnea. I'm going to talk a little bit about predictive adherence modeling in reference to PAP devices, but also with some applicability to medical treatment in general. Thirdly, I'm going to be talking about a new patient-centered outcomes and coordinated care management approach for sleep medicine. And lastly, I'm going to be talking about sleep medicine in the future. So, as most of you in this room know, the main three types of treatment that we've been relying on for sleep apnea are positive air pressure surgery and oral appliances. There is some newer therapies that are being tested, and some are already being used fairly widely throughout the United States. One is hypoglossal stimulation. We've done about 20 patients so far and have had pretty good results with that. And as you know, it's basically a stimulating device that goes into the genioglossus muscle, going down to a pacemaker-like device at the chest wall that actually detects the breathing cycle. And in some patients, it actually can be quite successful. There's also some work on negative pressure devices. Basically, one in particular expands the neck region to help open up the airway by a collar-like device that wraps around the neck, and that also has been showing promise. Weight loss, as most of you know, is mainly used as adjunctive therapy. All the years I've been doing sleep apnea work, I've only seen actually 2 patients that have actually had a dramatic improvement in in their sleep apnea. And both of those patients had borderline cases of apnea to begin with, but they had dramatic weight loss, one by bariatric surgery and the other by just diet reduction. And unfortunately, what happens is as the airway gets older, it gets more flexible and more collapsible. So unfortunately, even those two patients, they later had sleep apnea return. So weight loss, nevertheless, is important as adjunctive therapy, but by itself, it really does significant improvement on a long-term basis. Behavior modification is just a fancy way of just telling people to stay on their backs, on their sides. But as you know, people move around a lot in their sleep, and also, even though they might be able to stay on their sides, they will have some degree of apnea. Medications is kind of an interesting area because up to this time, people were mainly looking at things like s00005 and other respiratory stimulants. But right now, there's a lot of interest by some companies to actually explore medication treatment for sleep apnea. So that might be something that might be showing some promise in just a few years. But I want to focus on a little bit about what might be important for sleep apnea and that's nasal treatments, because approximately 5% of obstructive sleep apnea in patients are estimated to be due directly due to nasal obstruction, but it does have indirect contributions to sleep apnea severity. And by direct contribution, the nasal area pretty much has to be almost completely occluded, and then with treatment for that complete occlusion, we recognize that the nose does have some direct contribution, but we know that even if the nasal airway is partially occluded, it can cause some alteration in airflow, worsening the severity of people that have obstructive sleep apnea. And as you can see by these diagrams, that the airway itself is divided into three major areas. You have the nasopharynx, which extends up to the bridge of the soft palate. The oropharynx, also called the velar pharynx, goes to the tip of the soft palate down to the tip of the glottis. And the laryngopharynx, also called the hypopharynx, roughly extends from the tip of the glottis down to the vocal cords. Now, one thing that we always do when we examine patients is look at their nose. And the reason is we look particularly at the turbinate tissue. And the reason why that's important is, especially during allergy season, this turbinate tissue might be inflamed and swollen, and that can cause some blockage of the nasal airway. And as I mentioned earlier, that should be aggressively treated, especially in children, for reasons that I'll talk about later. But most importantly, especially if the person does have significant occlusion of the nasal airway, even when they have sleep apnea, when you put them on CPAP, that might consist of a significant barrier for their use of CPAP. And we notice, and we know that it does have an impact during sleep. This is a very early study done in 1981 that showed just 8 subjects, and they looked at nasal resistance during the daytime, nasal resistance during the night. And what you can see is in most patients there was an increase in nasal resistance during sleep. And if you look at other things like mean values per sleep hour for awakenings and sleep stage changes with the nose open, the nose obstructed, you can see that the number of awakenings as well as sleep stage changes are significantly different when the nose is obstructed. And even if you look at just percent change in nasal resistance plotted against change in obstructive apneas per hour, you can see a linear relationship that as there's an increase in nasal resistance, there's also a change in the obstructive apneas per hour. But one of the more interesting studies was done way back in 1981 by Harvard. And what he did was he took 24 rhesus monkeys that were studied at birth, 3 months and 6 months, and he actually placed plugs, silicone plugs placed in their nares. and that resulted in an obvious significant nasal resistance increase. And when he looked at these rhesus monkeys over time, what he noted was that the increase in nasal resistance halted growth of the maxillomandibular skeleton and induced changes in the nasomaxillary mandible and pharyngeal airspace. And then, importantly, there was development of mouth breathing in association with the increase in nasal resistance. Because if the nose is occluded, the monkey or human is going to depend more on their mouth breathing. And not only at night, but also during the daytime. And this obligate mouth breathing and alteration in craniofacial growth are associated with obstructive sleep apnea. And when we look at some of the results later on for people that do have nasal resistance, there's a tendency for a retreating mandible. There's also a greater inclination of the mandibular and occlusal planes, meaning that there tends to be more protrusion or more severe angle of the maxilla and mandible areas. In addition, there's also some greater inclination of the upper incisors, so the upper incisors tend to protrude out a little further. And the consequent result is that the person develops kind of a long face syndrome because there's greater height of the maxilla and mandibular skeleton. And so even at rest, what happens is the person is able to close their lips from their mouth just because of that greater inclination of the height of both the maxilla and mandibular spaces. And one thing is, the quarterback, John Elway, if you look at pictures of him, I swear he probably had a lot of nasal obstruction as a child because he also has kind of this open posture. So, what can be done, for this type of condition? Well, one is being really aggressive, especially for children that have some nasal obstructions. So, things like trying to treat the seasonal allergies really aggressively can lessen the chance that they will have developmental changes of their maxillomandibular spaces. The other approach that has been looked at is can nasal stents help, both in the treatment of obstructive sleep apnea, but also opening up the nasal resistance of the airway. And this was one of the first studies that I could find, which was in 1977, where they looked at 3 children with sleep apnea and alveolar hypoventilation involved in the delay in poor growth. And they basically had this nasopharyngeal tube followed by an endotonsillectomy. And they looked at efficacy by serial PHGs and arterial blood gases. And in these 3 children, it was well tolerated, and as you can see by this graph, effective in treating sleep apnea. So A is with the nasopharyngeal tube, the middle is without it, and C is with tonsillectomy. And the y-axis just shows apneas per hour. So as you would expect, without the nasopharyngeal tube, there was an increase. But it was very close to an endotonsillectomy with the nasopharyngeal tube inserted. There was another study in 1981 where they had 2 patients with sleep apnea and significant daytime sleepiness, and they had this flexible nasopharyngeal tube. And after 6 months of treatment, these 2 patients reported better sleep and less fatigue with no complications. And you can see with the tube in place, there was fairly good breathing. One other earlier study looked at 24 sleep apnea patients, 20 of which were men, and they had baseline PHGs and also a PHG with the nasopharyngeal tube inserted. And this is disordered breathing events per hour of sleep. And the dark bars are on baseline for the apnea index, apnea-hypopnea index, and the gray bars with the tube inserted. You can see there's a corresponding decrease in these disordered breathing events with the tube in place. Well, in order to study this in more detail, we actually did a meta-analysis in 2014 where we looked at the outcomes of obstructive sleep apnea treated with these nasal stents. And of 570 potential studies, 16 met study criteria. You can see that there was a significant decrease in the mean apnea index, mean apnea hypopnea index, and an increase in the mean minimum O2. But with this meta-analysis, there wasn't a real home run. And the conclusion was that some studies did demonstrate limited effectiveness and tolerability of these stenting devices, while other studies showed a significant benefit in OSA with a high level of patient acceptance. So we started looking at this device that was in Tokyo, and it's basically a flexible semi-rigid silicone rubber tube that's coated with hydrophilic gel. And the distal end is inserted through the intermediaries and positioned with within the nasopharynx and retropalatal oral pharynx. And there's a clip at the proximal end that attaches to the exterior nasal septum to keep the device in place. The advantage of this device compared to earlier device is that it was one more flexible, plus it was coated with that hydrophilic gel that made the insertion a little easier. But it is a single-use device. And this just shows it, what it actually looks like. You have a nasal clip that I mentioned earlier, and there's some air vents that allow ancillary airflow. It is able to resist a 5-week load, and it's able to withstand over 20 centimeters of water pressure. And it's really easy, depending on your point of view, it's fairly easy to insert. Basically, it's slipped in by the patient. They go to a mirror to ensure that it's about 1 centimeter past the level of the soft, free edge of the soft palate. They go to sleep in the morning, they just pull it out and dispose it. And it's actually positioned in the velar pharynx, in the retropalatal oral pharynx. And there was a pilot study that was done to test the effectiveness of the device for sleep apnea treatment with 6 men who had sleep apnea. They were pretty severe cases of sleep apnea. And what happened was it was actually assessed by a level 4 device before and after insertion. And the physicians instructed and trained all the subjects on how to insert the mask into the cavity. And as I mentioned, there were some that had severe cases, but the distribution was mild moderate as well. And as you can see, most of the patients on this limited pilot study did show improvement despite the age and BMI spread. And they did show increase in minimum SpO2 as well as decrease in the ODI. And as you can see from this one of the subjects, during the night without the mask, and with the mask there was a difference compared to the normal subject. And the snore index, for those that had a pretty significant snoring, there was an improvement as well, and as you would expect, because it is at a level past the soft palate into the oral pharynx. And longitudinally, also, it makes sense that you would expect to see a persistence in effect over time, and that's what was shown. These first bars are without stent, and this shows a control subject, and this is over a year in time. And you can see with the mask in place, although there's some variability, it was definitely better than without the mask in place. So for this preliminary study of just 6 subjects, mild and moderate sleep apnea and oxygen saturation improved. It had no effect on hypoxic events in one participant who had mild OSA and oxygen hypertrophy. It was also limited in one patient with severe OSA, and it improved snoring in most participants. And there wasn't significant adverse effects with the device. Another study looked at it just for snoring, and on days 1 to 3, it was without the mask, and it was looking at a voice recorder and very crude sleep monitoring device. Days 4 to 6, was practiced wearing the device, and the experimental period was a day 7 to 9 repeated measures. And this shows a flow diagram. There were 16 that were looked at. 2 subjects dropped out because it was difficult to wear, and then there were a total of 14 that were completed the study, but 5 who did not snore at all. And when subjectively they were asked, was it difficult to insert the NAS? You know, there were quite a few that said it was difficult. 2 dropped out, and by the end they said it was a little difficult or not at all, just because they were getting used to inserting the device. And then in terms of getting up at night, you can see there was kind of a spread early on, but later on that settled down to 0 to 1 times during the night that they awakened. And then in terms of how long it took them to fall asleep, there were a few that said it was impossible, and 2 dropped out here, but at the end it was just a little longer than usual, or much longer than usual in one subject. And you can see there was a reduction in percentage in snoring time in total sleep time, particularly with the mask compared to without the mask. So one of the last pilot studies was looking at could this stent be effective in patients with a narrow velopharynx compared to hypopharynx. So what they looked at is they looked at the placement of this device, whether it was placed in individuals that had a narrow velopharynx compared to narrow hypopharynx, and they classified them as either responders or non-responders. And how they broke down the classification of velopharynx and hypopharynx was they looked at the inferior airway space ratio over the middle airway space. And here are classifications of responders versus non-responders. And the way they classified responders were a reduction in